day of the department, 20th July. 20th July 2006 was a day when the Department of Pali was established. Then it was just called Department of Pali, with a formal notification to that effect was issued by the then Honorable Vice Chancellor. And today, 2021, we are completing 15 years of our journey. And let me tell you that it has been a wonderful journey, full of challenges and full of many fascinating experiences and adventures as well. And we have really enjoyed being a part of it. Initially, when the department was established, we were only 2 faculty members, myself and my colleague, Dr. Ujjwal Kumar, who has now joined the University of Calcutta as an associate professor and has now become the head of the department there as well. So 2 of us were there and with some visiting faculty. And in 2013, government of Maharashtra sanctioned 14 teaching positions along with the 4 non-teaching positions. So that was a big boost for the department. From that, in the first interview held in 2013, 6 of the faculties were appointed. So we are having now the strength of 6 regular faculty members. In between, of course, Dr. Anirban Das, who was also our faculty, has now joined the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Sarnath. And now we have left with 6 faculty members, including myself. Plus, we have 4 adjunct professors whom I called the pillars of the department. Professor Bahulkar, Professor Gokhale, Pradeep Gokhale, Professor Dr. Neelam Oswal and Dr. Lata Devkar. And we also have a fortune of having the assistance or guidance of Professor Lata Chhatre, the former head of the Department of Philosophy. So with these senior professors and scholars in the field, with some young team of my colleagues and a wonderful administrative staff, because that is something which is also rare in the institutes. These days, people often complain about that, but I'm really lucky to have a wonderful, efficient staff in library and on the office. So with the help of all of them, the department has made this progress for the last 15 years. We started with the courses in Pali, then we expanded it to the courses in Buddhist literature. And then the courses were now, a few years back, were renamed as courses in Buddhist studies, in line with the international practice in this regard. And right now we are having 12 different diplomas, which include diplomas related to languages, the study of Pali and Buddhist Sanskrit literature, Tibetan, classical Tibetan literature, as well as courses in Buddhist psychology. So we have 2 courses which deal with the applied part of Buddhist psychology. One is the applied Mahayana Buddhist psychology and ethics program, and another is the Theravada Buddhist psychology and psychotherapy program. Let me remove this covering. It makes it difficult to speak. Excuse me for that. Yes. So with these various diplomas, I mean, so diplomas in psychology, we also have a course, a diploma in the engaged Buddhism, because Buddhism is not just a philosophy or theory which we learn in isolation, but it is something which applies to human life and is seen as a problem-solving solution given by the Buddha, because it's a methodology. These are principles given by the Buddha, and we can apply it to any problem of human life. So there's a course in Engaged Buddhism. We have recently started a course in Ambedkar and Buddhism, studying Ambedkar from the point of view of a person of religious studies, because this aspect of his is a bit ignored. And it's interesting to see how he deals with the issue of religion as a whole, and then how he engages with Buddhism, the religion which he accepted in 1956. Besides this, we have started a wonderful course in collaboration with Deccan College, and it's a course which again brings together the study of literature, philosophy, art, architecture, history, and the professional aspect of tourism. So it's a course called Postgraduate Diploma in Buddhist Heritage and Tourism, which is a course which we are starting today, this year actually. And I'm really happy that just last year we had an MOU signed between the two institutes, and Professor Shrikant Ganveer of Deccan College will be kind of coordinating that course from the Deccan College side, and we are really looking forward to that course. We have really received a good response when the admissions were open, and we have received more applications than the intake capacity. So we are happy for that. This department started as a small establishment when actually I did my MA as a student in this very university. There were no Indian students studying this subject, unfortunately. That was 1996. And since 2000, things started changing, and Indians started getting interested in the study of Buddhism. And this has been growing since then. The two major factors, or the three major factors, I must say. One factor is responsible for this growth in the interest in Buddhism is, of course, Dr. Ambedkar's historic conversion to Buddhism, and the enthusiasm in the Buddhist community to know their own roots, to know their own philosophy, and so on. This is one major factor which kind of added to this growth. Second important factor is Acharya S.N. Goenka's Vipassana moment. Vipassana as a way of meditation became very popular since 1970s when Acharya Satyanarayan Goenka started conducting Vipassana retreats all over India and abroad. And many people through him, cutting across social religious barriers, started getting interested in Buddhism. And the third important figure is, of course, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and with his presence in India, and lots of enthusiasm has been created, not just among Buddhists, but also in non-Buddhist scientists, psychologists, who are looking at Buddhism as an alternate way of thinking, and they are really turning now to the wisdom of the Buddha for many different things. So His Holiness has started this Mind Life Institute, where he started a dialogue between the neuroscientists and Buddhist philosophers, psychologists and Buddhist philosophers, and this has really gained momentum at present. And as a result, we see this kind of increased interest in the subject. We are also getting good number of students from foreign countries who are being interested in studying Buddhism. Apart from that, from the academic side, I must mention the Kensei Foundation, who has been supporting the academic endeavors in the field of Buddhist studies. And they have been supporting the department since 2015. And through that, we have established a visiting professorship program. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we are not having any professor right now at the department. They're mostly doing the programs online. But that has really brought the department in the limelight because of this foreign scholars. Many scholars of international repute have visited the department, have conducted courses over and above our regular courses, and these are specialized courses in the areas of those respective scholars. So this has really added to the value of education here in the department. And this has also resulted into some kind of long-term collaborative projects with our colleagues. And the present book today, which we are going to release at the hands of the dignitaries, is a result of such a collaboration. So we are today having with us my colleague, Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov from the University of Marburg in Germany. And besides this, there are several other colleagues who are joining from different parts of the world. We are really thankful to Kensei Foundation for this wonderful support, and to all those scholars who have visited the department have made this success possible. For last few years, there are several publications which the department has brought out, and these are here displayed. Some of them are displayed here in the hall for your perusal. And we are really happy that what we could achieve throughout this journey is all because of this so many helping hands. In Buddhism, we say that there is no single cause for any happening in the world. So whatever single small thing is to happen, it requires many causes and conditions. And it's really true. So whatever success we have is not a success of a single person. There are so many factors which are responsible for it. And I'm really thankful. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of them. Whom I have named, and of course there are many more whom I could not name because of the lack of time. And there are many unknown factors also which are responsible for this. I'm really thankful to all the vice chancellors since the inception of the department who have been supportive to the department's activities, and especially presently Professor Karmalkar is here. He's always been very kind and supportive and appreciates the work of the department. I'm really happy that today our guests, Professor Karnal Lag and Professor Mihir Arjunwarkar and Professor Joshi and Professor Bahulkar have spared their time, and also Mr. Kishore Patil has spared the time to join us for this function. I'm also thankful to Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov from Germany, who has joined us from Germany, and he'll be giving today talking about the book. And I'm also thankful to an important person about whom I'll talk shortly. So today we are going to celebrate our journey by a book release, because for academicians that is something which we are aiming at, right? I mean, the creation of knowledge and the dissemination of knowledge. So these are the two main objectives of any academic institute. And so we thought that we should celebrate our 15th anniversary, not just by some fun activity. Of course, this is also a fun activity for academicians to publish something, and we are more than happy to do that than anything else. So in fact, so we are going to enjoy this time by releasing a book. It's a third volume in the series called Pune Indological Series, which was established in 2017. I mentioned some time back about the Kensei Foundation Visiting Professorship Program. And we thought that when these scholars are coming here and we are doing some kind of collaborative research with scholars who are related to Pune now, so why not to start a publication series? And when we decided to do this, of course, our main aim was to publish quality research in the field. But at the same time, we also wanted to produce quality product. I mean, as a book as a product, which as an aesthetic product, not just something, not just a piece of papers collected together. So we wanted to kind of produce it beautifully and also with a high academic quality. And this is how Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov, who was there at that time, and we decided to establish this series with Dr. Dimitrov, Professor Bahulkar, Dr. Lata Devkar, and myself as members of the editorial board. And at the first publication, we brought out a book called Edit or Not to Edit, a wonderful book by Professor Jürgen Haneda of Germany. And this book speaks a lot about the very important subject in our field, and that is text editing or textual criticism. And this was a wonderful book which received good reception from the scholarly world. It has really gone in all parts of the world. The second book in the series was another German scholar, Dr. Martin Strauber, who published Haribhatta's Jatakamala, a text which was initially lost by Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, it was Jatakamala by Haribhatta, a wonderful scholar, a wonderful writer, and whom actually our teacher, Professor Mikhail Hahn, first he discovered this author and his works from Nepal. And then Dr. Martin Strauber, he edited this text based on the materials of Professor Hahn. And that was our second publication. Professor Strauber was also a visiting professor here in the department. And that was the second book in the series. And this third book now, which we are going to release today, is an interesting piece. In a way, it is not directly connected with Buddhism, so to say. Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov has introduced and edited this book. He will be talking about it in detail. But let me just tell you briefly about this book. Uh, Miguel de Cervantes was a famous Spanish novelist, and he wrote a novel called Don Quixote. Now, this book was very dear to Spanish people, and it has been translated in many languages of the world. The very first translation not the very first, but the English translation, which actually is also included in this book by Charles Jarvis, was done in the first half of 18th century. And then a very famous American book collector, and he was an accountant, but he was a book collector, Carl Keller. He has suggested to get this book translated in as many languages of the world as possible. And as a part of that, when they look at India, they thought that it should be also translated into Indian languages. I think many of us have kind of, been brought up reading this book in different forms, in different languages, in different translations. So as a part of this activity, actually, the first Gujarati translation came up in the second half of 19th century. And it was published in Mumbai by some Parsi guys. Then in 1930s, actually, Keller's friend, Mark Orelstein, who was at that time in India, Sir Mark Orelstein, with his mediation, it was decided to get the book translated into Sanskrit. Now, it's an interesting story because the book belongs to 16th century, and there was a thought to translate it into Sanskrit. Of course, and then at that time, Stein contacted the two Kashmiri Pandits, Pandit Nityananda Shastri and Jagat Darjadu. And he interested in the task of translating this book. They did not know Spanish, so they were given this English translation of Jarvis, and based on that English translation of Jarvis, they were asked to translate the book into Sanskrit. And then these two scholars, they translated the book, 8th chapter of this book actually, the first part of the book, in 1935-36. And then, since then, the book was, it was there in the manuscript form. And the manuscript then was preserved in Harvard Library. And then from them, our colleagues in Marburg who have joined us online today, some of them are already here. I can see them on the device. So the group of people in the University of Marburg, Germany, they took up the task of editing this Sanskrit manuscript. They also kind of wanted to find out what was the original source of this book and so on, and they worked on it for many years together. And then my friend and colleague, Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov, he finally took up the task and prepared the edition. And it was published now here as the third volume of Pune Anthological series. Few important things about this book, which make the book very special. One thing I have already given you a small history of the book. So, a book comes from so many centuries behind from somewhere else. It has been translated, and it has its own journey. And now here we see in the audience we have several people who are here, and they are again there are these conditions which are responsible for the production of the book. First, sitting to my right, Professor Bahulkar, of course. We thought that why not to bring this book in audio form. Usually Sanskrit books are printed, but I'm not really aware of any book which has been kind of printed along with the audiobook. So we thought to produce an audiobook because this is something, it's a story, it's a narrative. So we thought that if it would be a nice idea to get it in the form of an audiobook, and we could not find any other person, who can do it as efficiently as Professor Bahulkar did. And with his wonderful style of reading and wonderful pronunciation of Sanskrit, Professor Bahulkar has produced this audio book, which forms a part of the pack, which we are going to release. For this audio recording, at that time, Professor Aniruddha Joshi was in charge of the studio of the university, and I'm really happy we use the infrastructure here. And Aniruddha Joshi has been very kind to make the studio available and took all the troubles to get this recording done. So thanks to Aniruddha Joshi for his support for making this audiobook possible. And then Professor Mihir Arjunwarkar was kind of coordinating all these things. He, though he's a scholar of computers, he's in field of scientific computing, but he has a kind of a rich heritage of Sanskrit studies. His both mother and father were wonderful Sanskritists, well-known Sanskritists of Pune, and he actually carries he carries a legacy. So he himself is a good scholar of Sanskrit, and he has really helped, and he has done this whole job of seeing through the audio recordings with Dragomir. So two of them really did that job when Dragomir was still here in Pune. Then besides that, another feature of this book, and where now CDAC comes in the picture. And this book has been, it again has a history of its own. The font which is used for publishing this book, this font is an ancient antique font, actually a German scholar, a poet and a translator, a Sanskritist, and a critic, August William von Schlegel. He created this typeset specially for publishing Sanskrit books in Germany, and he used some kind of manuscripts for taking out the shapes of the fonts. I think later on Dragomir and Kishore probably can talk more about it. So and he developed this font typesets actually types in 1821. So exactly 200 years later. Now it's 2021. Dragomir Dimitrov, he developed out of that those fonts. I think he kind of what he calls it, restructuring of those fonts for fonts which can be used on computers. And he's not he's not an expert in this field, but he, with his own initiative, he did lots of things. But then there are a few things which for which we really need an expert hand. And this is where, if we were looking for people, and our colleague and friend Samir Agale, who is also here in the audience, he connected Dragomir with the colleagues in CIRAC. And after a few discussions and meetings, then finally, I think Kishore Patil and his team, and they decided to take it up. And I'm really happy that they really worked hard in making the font usable on computers. And this is how CDAC comes into play. And I'm really happy that today Colonel Nath is here representing the CDAC along with Kishore Patil. So this is a joint work. And one important person, whom we cannot really forget, an important figure. And we are really happy to have him here with us today online. And he is Mr. Surendranath Pandita. Mr. Surendranath Pandita is in Haryana right now, but he is the grandson of the Kashmiri Pandit whom I mentioned, Pandit Nityananda Shastri, who translated the book. And we are really happy that Surendranath Pandita ji has very kindly made available all the correspondence which his grandfather had, and helped Dragomir in reconstructing the history of the book. I think Dragomir will talk more about it, and Pandita is also here, so he will also share some of his memories. So he's also there. And last but not the least, is Mr. Aspi Forbes. Actually, it seems that he's having some problem. He's trying to call me, but anyhow, he will join us soon, it seems. So Mr. Aspi Forbes of the Jack Printers in Mumbai, he was our printer, and he did all the hard work to publish the book in such a beautiful form. We wanted it to have a wonderful paper, wonderful binding, and wonderful feel. Dragomir was very conscious about it. As I cannot, I cannot see. He wanted the book to have a wonderful touch, so that I can enjoy the book just by touching it. And we wanted to produce the book in such a fashion, and we are really happy that with Mr. Aspi Forbes' efforts and his Jack printers, his publishing company, we could do this successfully. So with my prolonged introduction, I'll now request Professor Mihir Arjunwarkar to start with, to speak a few words about the book and about his engagement with the book. Today we are going to talk nothing about the book. So I think that's something which is close to our heart, and this is what we are going to talk, and this will be our celebration for the day. So I request Professor Arjun Warkar to take over the mic.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Karmalkar, Colonel Nath, Executive Director, SEDAC, distinguished dignitaries and illustrious audience. I just hope that nobody will mind if I refer to Professors Mahesh and Lata Devkar, Professor Dragomir Dimitrov and Professor Aniruddha Joshi sitting next to me by their first names, because apart from being academic colleagues, they are also close personal friends. So it's hard for me to refer to them formally. I feel honored that I have been asked to speak here. My field is completely different. Mahesh mentioned my parents, their legacy is imposing. I am not sure if I am the right person to carry it on, but so let me explain why I am speaking here. So the first reason I have been asked to speak here is um, in a very informal way. I happen to be a catalyst who introduced Dragomir with Aniruddha. This Aniruddha was, as Mahesh mentioned, was handling the e-content studio in the university back then, and this eventually led to the production of the audio book of the Sanskrit Quixote. Um, well, there are many pleasant memories of Dragomir's visits here. We used to meet in the canteen under the Department of Law here, and true to our form, we used to call it canteen in law. The canteen is long gone now. Kalaya Tasmai Namaha is what comes to my mind, but its unexpected legacy remains in the form of this audiobook. Second reason why I am here again, Mahesh mentioned this. I seem to have inherited a genetic defect from my illustrious parents. They were both Sanskrit scholars, and this defect predisposes me to find flaws and faults. I'm sure Honorable Vice Chancellor agrees with this thing. So when Professor Bahulkar asked me to audit his audiobook recording sessions, I felt quite honored. Uh, the idea was to listen while he read the Sanskrit Quixote during recording and identify any inadvertent slips of tongue because of the stylized, idiomatic, heavy Sanskrit prose. However seasoned, Professor Bahulkar always rehearsed the text to be recorded. I am a witness to that, like a serious actor. So when which means Dragomir, sometimes from the studio, sometimes online, when Dragomir and me made any suggestions about improvement, he considered them very seriously and painstakingly corrected any occasional slips. This was humbling for me. I must say that the zeal of Professor Bahulkar and Dragomir were matched in equal amounts by the skill and dedication of Aniruddha here and his whole studio team. This is no small accomplishment, and the studio people need accolades for this thing. I am happy that the university has supported this worthy initiative wholeheartedly. An interesting feature of the audiobook are the musical interludes, those who have listened to the audio. True to the form of the book, these musical interludes are an interesting fusion of Spanish folk with tabla. The idea goes to Dragomir again. These pieces are chosen, mixed, and mastered by Master Dragomir himself. Moreover, this is done in taste and moderation, preserving the sanctity of both music forms. Otherwise, there is this standard pun about fusion and confusion. Um, that has not happened. Incidentally, the tabla player Anup Gaikwad was associated with the Center for Performing Arts in this university. Dragomir's other adventure has been mentioned by Mahesh, that was turning the historical font Schlegel font into Unicode. I was not part of this thing. Maybe I made a couple of suggestions of who could be contacted. Kishore Patil of CDAC will be speaking about this. The font is certainly a worthy byproduct of this book, and I will be happy to see it in the public domain sometime. Uh, okay, Dragomir is meticulous. In fact, he is meticulous to a fault. An incurable perfectionist, if I may so. He has put in immense efforts into making this book both flawless and beautiful in content as well as in form. We only have to look at his extensive preface, footnotes, commentary, the music in the audiobook, and the looks of the book. Every T is dashed, every I is dotted. An occasional exception, if any, might only help to prove the rule. Personally, I am happy that Dragomir chose LaTeX for the typesetting, as an ancient proverb in the tech domain says, if it is in tech, it must be true. Mahesh, Lata, and Dragomir made sure that there are no compromises in the production quality. This is equally important. In spirit, Mahesh has already talked about this. In spirit, their pursuit of excellence is nothing short of the classical grammarian's pledge of rigor. Well, I mean, expressed as a backhanded compliment to the grammarian, it says, Ardhamatra laghavenapi putra janmotsavam manyante vayyakaranaha. I'm sure they would agree with this. In passing, I am tempted to mention one curious phenomenon about the book that I have mentioned elsewhere. People browse through the book, they are impressed. They look at the logo on the jacket and they are pleasantly surprised. I believe that a kind of scholarly tradition which was there in the university, which was perhaps weakened in between, has now restarted with books in this book and other books from the Pune Indological series. I dare say that this book, and indeed all the other books in the Pune Indological series, have set a high and lofty but necessary standard for scholarly excellence in this university. In the long run, it is people like these, Mahesh, Professor Bahulkar, Dragomir, Lata, others, and works like this Quixote book. These are the things that a university often gets remembered by in the long run. So, with humility, I congratulate the editors of the Pune Indological series, Mahesh, Lata, Dragomir, and Professor Bahulkar. I hope to see more such excellent and worthy works published under the banner of the series. And I am happy to have been a small part of this great exotic adventure. Thank you.
Please mute the mic. Mute the mic there. Thank you very much, Mihir. So let me also make it more informal now. It's really painful to to call each other with formal names. Anyway, so yes, I'm really thankful to you that you mentioned Anup. Anup Gaikwad, he's a professional tabla player now, but again a student of this very university of Lalit Kala Kendra. Dragomir just provided him with the Spanish pieces of music, and Anup then composed his tabla pieces along with that, fused them with that, and it really became so natural. Now, I mean, if somebody listens to this, it's a wonderful product. And Mihir just now mentioned about this audio recording. It's not a small piece. We have altogether 5 hours and 50 minutes audio recording for the book. And the credit goes to Aniruddha for this. So I request now Aniruddha to share his memories about the production and his thought. Yes. So Aniruddha, please.
So, Honorable Vice Chancellor.
I think please turn on the mic.
Yeah. So, hello everybody, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Colonel Nath, Mihir, Mahesh, Professor Bahulkar, and all others present here. I'm really happy and proud to be part of this project. For one reason, that is everybody knows that I am a computers and technology guy, and we really love to play around with the technology in different ways. And when this project came here and when Mihir actually introduced me to Dragomir, after that Dragomir and me also became friends, and now we will be friends forever. But this project was very interesting for many reasons for us. One is by then we were actually learning the editing, the audio, video, and this was more challenging as Mihir mentioned that sometime Dragomir was here present physically in the studio, and sometime he was sitting in the Germany, and basically he's sitting in the Germany and me, Professor Bahulkar, and Mihir sitting in the studio. That's how the coordination actually worked very interestingly. And as everybody mentioned that this is very ancient text, and having this experience was wonderful for me. Of course, I read this book when I was doing my Spanish diploma. The original Spanish book of Don Quixote, because we were fascinated by that book, and many Spanish experts told us to read the book, and we really enjoyed the book. And till today, I can find many Don Quixotes and other characters around me. So I'm really happy to be part of this project. It's just that I am the person who was there at the right time at the right place. So other than enjoying this journey, and as Mihir mentioned, we really learned other than technological stuff that how meticulous can somebody be in executing a project from end to end. So as a techno-managerial experience, it was really great experience for us, and it was addition to my knowledge also. And my other team members who were in the studio, we really enjoyed this journey. And I'm really thankful to Mir, Mahesh, Dragomir, and Professor Bahulkar to be there when this was happening in the studio. And yeah, just enjoy this book. Everybody will enjoy the book. Look at the quality of the text as the physical book as well as audio book. So thank you for making me part of this very interesting, wonderful project. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Aniruddha. That was really a wonderful experience. And now I think we should hear from.
Please mute other.
Mute that. Yeah. So now I think we should hear from as Mihir in the morning mentioned to me, Buzurg, the real senior Professor Bahulkar, who has provided voice to Cervantes in Sanskrit. So I'm just invoking that voice now. So Professor Bahulkar, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Professor Karmalkar, Honorable Vice Chancellor of our University, Colonel Nath, Executive Director of SIDAC, and friends. It gives me immense pleasure to be with you this evening. Mahesh, I also use the first name of names. Mahesh has asked me to speak a few words to explain how we prepared the audio book. Let me tell you that I have got a very good experience of reciting Sanskrit text, narratives, also performing Sanskrit plays in All India Radio, and I have been associated with All India Radio Pune for the last 6 years. So this experience of reading out Sanskrit helped me much. Still, I found that it was not very easy to read out the book, the text. I would say a few words about the translation itself, the Sanskrit language, and also the difficulties I encountered in reading out the text. The translation, as we know, was made some more than 80 years ago by two Kashmiri Pandits, Jagadhar Jadoo and Nityananda Shastri. Unfortunately, the manuscript was lying unnoticed for a long time. And I noticed that there have been some works describing the history of modern Sanskrit literature, but I did not find any mention of this book or this translation so far because it was not available at all. We are now fortunate to have this translation in a good shape. It is edited by Dragomir very systematically in a very perfect manner and is reproduced in a very beautiful form. Thanks to our friend Dragomir, who spared no pains in editing the book and bringing out a very good publication under Pune Indological series. Regarding the Sanskrit text, Dragomir has already highlighted some noteworthy feature of the text in his introduction on page 95 onwards. The Sanskrit text is remarkably faithful to the English translation. At the same time, it bears some significant characteristics of an adaptive translation, but only as much as it was necessary to enable the traditional Sanskrit text. Enable the traditional Sanskrit reader who is unfamiliar with the cultural data of Spain at the time of the composition of the text. As a whole, the Sanskrit translation is quite balanced and in most cases easily intelligible. The vocabulary used in the Sanskrit translation belongs to the classical Sanskrit, I must say. Although this is a piece of modern Sanskrit literature, the vocabulary is not a typically modern or a kind of modern Sanskrit influenced by our own languages, Indian languages. Because whenever we speak in Sanskrit or write in Sanskrit, I could notice that it is sometimes a translation of our sentences or thoughts in our own languages. For example, if I say, Sarvesham bhavatam upasthitihi prarthaniya asti asti, it is a translation of the Hindi sentence. Aap sab logon ki upasthiti prarthaniya hai. And this is never said in Sanskrit. This is not classical Sanskrit, this is modern Sanskrit. That is the difference between classical Sanskrit and modern Sanskrit. I must say that these two translators have followed the style of classical Sanskrit and it was very difficult. Then there are a few examples of, however, that would show that at times the vocabulary is something different which is not used in Sanskrit. There are certain words which are not popular in Sanskrit. And the translators had to coin some new words for the well-known English words. For example, windfall, windmill, It is Peshani Yantra. Actually, it is, this word is coined, but it is influenced by the word Vayu Peshani, which is given by V.S. Apte in his dictionary, Sanskrit English dictionary. So also there is one more word, rosemary is translated as Japa Pushpa, again on the basis of the word which we find in the dictionary. And another feature is, as I said, the atmosphere is different. The cultural context is different. So it must be very difficult, and I have some experience of writing in Sanskrit, translating some pieces in Sanskrit. And when the cultural context is different, it is very difficult to find a proper vocabulary and proper style. And so sometimes a landlord is translated as Bhojana Shala Adhipati. It's such a big word. One can say Guraswami, etc. But sometimes the translators have to Sanskritize some words, Spanish words or English words, like Rairana Dvipam, Sivilli Bhumi Vagaha, Roginant is the name of the horse, and Dolasena, the name of his fancy, like Sigova and Sancho Panj, etc. It's just a translation, Sanskritized form of an English word. So these are the characteristics and also difficulties with the text. When I was asked to read out the Sanskrit and prepare an audio book, I had to read it sometimes 2-3 times, because what happens, the printed text has to be understood carefully, and there have to be certain pauses and intonations, some change of voice, so that the sentence would be intelligible. If you do not understand that Sanskrit properly, you are likely to make mistakes. For example, if I read the text here, for example, Tvaraya, if I read this, Tvaraya Dhavantasya Purato Vartamanam Prathamam Peshanim Sanchankrama Samachakrama, and the printed word is Dhavantasya, but you have to say Tvaraya Dhavan Tasya Purato, because this in a printed text it is just a sandhi, but there is no word like Dhavantasya. If at all it is there, it is ungrammatical. So like Tvaraya Dhavan means quickly rushing, Tasya Purato in front of him. So you have to separate that. These techniques one has to use, otherwise one would not understand that. Although the translation is very good, I must say it is difficult. It is not easy to understand. And we are very fortunate to have the English translation, which forms the basis of the Sanskrit translation, because even if I read this, because of this difficulties, cultural context is different and the vocabulary is different, and the narrative is not so easy to understand. So one has to read it again and again, and that was the main difficulty which I had to face at times. Sometimes there are long sentences and long compounds, samasas. You can separate the sandhis or euphonic combinations. Although it is the verbs are combined, you can separate them, but you cannot separate samasas. And when are long compounds, you have to take care that they should be understood by the listeners. For example, yes sampratamapi mad Vijay Labda Kirtya Viharanabhipraye Naitan Rakshasan Vata Peshaneshu Parivartitavan Asmi. If I read out this way, no one would understand it easily. So I have to say, Yaha Sampratamapi Mad Vijaya Labda Kirti Abhiharana Abhiprayena Etan Rakshasan Vata Peshaneshu Parivartitavan Asmi. And see, Don Quixote, he is very aggressive person, and so I had to enact his sentences. It was not easy, and I would love to do it again sometimes, because unfortunately, despite all my efforts, I can see some defects in my narration, And but I think I tried my best, and it has come out nicely. And I must say, I must thank Dragomir first, who in fact insisted that I should read out. I was not very comfortable with that, but he consoled me and he convinced me that I can do that. And I must also mention Mahesh, who is always with me, and he is also supportive of me, all my efforts. And Mihir, he was very, what to say, he is very keen on reading, listening to my narration, and he was able to find out my mistakes. So we had to repeat it again, because sometimes there were some wrong pronunciation, otherwise, or sometimes there was wrong way of presenting the sentences. So he would stop me and he asked me to read it again, so I would do that. And of course, Aniruddhaji also helped me a lot. I thank all of these friends, and I'm really happy that I could produce a very interesting piece of narration. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Professor Bahulkar. He has always been, a guide and he's always been a guide and a source of inspiration for all of us here. He always has new ideas and projects, and whenever we meet, sometime here, sometime at home, we always kind of come up with some new projects. And so, I mean, this is his inspiration that really has motivated us to work so hard tirelessly. So I'm really thankful to him for his support, and it's such a nice and soothing feeling that he's there with us. So I'm really thankful. He mentioned this particular, I mean, Mihir called it a fault finding, but sometimes fault finding is not a fault, but it becomes a quality, and especially which is necessary for an editor or a proofreader. So I still remember Professor Hahn like saying, okay, I mean, when he was so happy when my daughter, she noticed a wrong full stop, and the full stop was not normal but italics, and she noticed it, and so she was so amazed. So how can you find such a small fault? So fault finding is such a wonderful thing, especially when we are in this field. Of course, not always, but it has to be used with discretion. We are really happy that Mr. Aspi Forbes has also joined us from Mumbai, and we are also having Surendra Pandita ji also with us from Haryana. But before going to them, I would like to request Mr. Kishore Patil to speak a few words about this particular adventure, I must say, about the font, and share his journey about it. So, Kishore, please.
I'm not speaker. Hello, myself Kishore. My respectful greeting to all the honorable guests. First of all, I heartily congratulate the Pali department on the 15th Foundation Day, and I express my gratitude to the department for making me a part of this program. I don't know how to speak. In fact, being a font developer and communication designer, I do more communication through the visual medium. It is said that, and I trust, if words are added to the visual medium, then the clarity of the visual medium is much more. That's why I'm trying to say some words about this beautiful font creation. I develop fonts for all the Indian languages,
the languages which are recognized by the Indian Constitution, as well as heritage script, which are Modi, Marathi, Marwadi, Mithalakshar, and so on. It gives me immense pleasure to have the opportunity to create a Schlegel font used to display the content and literature for the Endological series volume 3, that is Don Quixote. Actually, the story of this font is different. This is a historical reconstruction of about 200-year-old metal typeface, which was used for Indian mythological stories printed around 200 years ago in Germany. In the context of this font creation, when I met Dr. Dogomir, he showed me Schlegel manuscript. After seeing it, I was surprised that I had never seen such a beautiful manuscript before. There are two aspects of font developing. One is calligraphic and the other is typographic. Creating font in typographic way fits within the scope of computer technology, whereas the calligraphic design is difficult. And coincidentally, the Schlegel manuscript was in calligraphic style, and yet the most difficult part was Sanskrit style. As you know, Sanskrit language have a number of top level and low level diacritics marks. That is Anudatta, Udatta, and much more. In this font, some of the characters are above baseline, some letters are below baseline, and when 2 or 3 letters are combined together, it becomes a completely different form. Developing all the combination in Devanagari Unicode version was quite a big challenging task for me. In fact, font developing is a combination of design and technology. Whatever is visible in printed form or display form called design. But how to display, that is technical part. I deeply studied manuscript, their writing stroke, thickness, tone, composition, letter combination, and then I design and develop this Unicode font version. I want to thank Dr. Dogomir that he used to do a lot of carefully micro level testing at the time of making this font. Maybe that's why I was able to develop such a beautiful font. This font is complete Sanskrit Unicode font version, which includes Devanagari Unicode, Devanagari Extended Unicode, Vedic Extension Unicode, and Latin characters. You can use 4 languages in this font, that is Sanskrit, Hindi, Marathi, and Nepali. It supports the vertical and horizontal combination. I have developed this font in collaboration with the Pune University Pali Department and University of Marburg, Germany for academic interest and research work. I would like to thank my organization CDAC for allowing me to do such a memorable work. My main objective of working on this font was to introduce an old Devanagari type to the new open type technology. With this creation, I have tried to reconstruct our historical heritage. Last but not least, I request Devkar sir, I would like to contribute in Pali Lipi in future. Thank you very much.
In fact, that would be our pleasure, and I mean, we have already passed on to him some Brahmi letters. So I think probably the next adventure would be working with some Brahmi fonts. So let us see. And I'm sure that with the support of CDAC, we will be able to do this adventure as well. Now, as I mentioned, we are having Surendra Panditaji here with us online. And I would request now, Talaji, how we are going to project it or show it, because now I'm going to request Surendra Panditaji to share his experiences, his memories, something about his grandfather, who was a figure behind all this, this Sanskrit translation. And it is something really beyond our imagination that somebody sitting in Kashmir in 1930s the two Pandits there doing this job. Something which comes from far away, from a very different cultural context, as Professor Bahulkar mentioned, and to put it in Sanskrit and through English, and the Jarvis's English from the 18th century. It's a wonderful actually combination, and we are really happy that Surendranath is here with us. So Surendranath, can you hear me? Can you please now take the mic in your hand? Yes, please. So we are very keenly waiting to listen to you. Talaji, are you ready? How can we?
Thank you so much for the kind opportunity.
Just a minute.
Respected and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin
Karmalkar. Just a minute. Just a minute. Please wait. Please wait for a few minutes. We are adjusting. Yeah. So please. Yeah. Now you can start.
Okay. Respected and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmalkar, Executive Director, CDAC, Colonel Ashok Kumar Nath, Professor Mahesh Deokar, Professor Shrikant Bahulkar, and my young friend, Shanti Pri, Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov, all the distinguished faculty scholars of your university, members of the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies, and all the participants. At the outset, I convey my warmest felicitations on the occasion of the 15th Foundation Day celebration of your department and formal release of the Pune Indological Series Volume 3, the excellent and outstanding book on the Sanskrit translation of Don Quixote by Dr. Dragomir. Honestly speaking, I'm nervous and I have no guess what to speak about in this eminent gathering. If truth be spoken, I have no qualification to be part of these deliberations other than the burden of eminence of my ancestor, who among many others more eminent than him was engaged in the Sanskrit translation of the Don Quixote, now brought to light by my dear friend Dr. Dragomir. In fact, Professor Deokar was very kind and generous to invite me to this auspicious program. The invitation was both humbling and a feeling of honor, and hence I had no courage to escape from participating in this program. However, before I go any further with my stray thoughts, I congratulate Dr. Dragomir for having produced an outstanding piece of scholarship for the world of learning. But for me and our family, extended family, he has earned our lifelong gratitude by bringing out this work of my grandfather from a long forlorn neglect and anonymity, as the work lay unknown and abandoned on the shelves of the Harvard University's Houghton Library for long 8 decades. Here I must express my profound gratitude and admiration for Dr. Dragomir's 2 colleagues at the Marburg University, Professor Stanislav Jagger, who in the first instance discovered the Sanskrit Manuscript in the Houghton Library in 2011, which was followed by reading sessions on it by Professor Jürgen Hennider, and many others till 2017. When Dr. Dragomir finally embarked to produce the edited volume, now under release today. Paucity of time prevents me to talk in detail on the history connected to this translation work, but fortunately, it's so exhaustively dealt by Dr. Dragomir in the book, and it's there for everyone to read. However, my praise for his efforts will always remain inadequate. Perhaps the expression of deepest gratitude and appreciation is sometimes more eloquent if expressed in silence than through words. For all about book, we'll have much to hear from Dr. Dragomir himself. My mother had seen Aurel Stein, and she would recall his small shoe size and wondered about the small size of his feet, but she did not know the reasons that he had amputated right toes and that were caused by the frostbite during one of the explorations in Central Asia. On many occasions, my father acted as Stein's assistant, taking dictations from him whenever his regular camp assistant, Ramchand Bali, was unavailable to him. In fact, Stein had even suggested my grandfather that my father could take down the translations of Don Quixote, as during the time my grandfather was afflicted with paralysis in the right side and could not hold the pen. But destiny had other designs. The writing task of the translation of Don Quixote fell to the share of Pandit Jagadhar Zadu, who also happened to be a relative, as my uncle, the second son of my grandfather, was married to Pandit Jagadhar's eldest daughter. Besides also, Jagadhar replaced my grandfather in the academic position at the college following his retirement there in 1931. My grandfather met Stein for the first time as a student in 1892 when he presented himself as a student for the examination at Lahore. Stein then was there, the registrar of the Punjab University. This encounter, divinely ordained, forged into a lifelong friendship, collaboration in scholarship that also fortunately lasted a lifetime. It may interest you to know that Stein, who was a confirmed bachelor, kept pet dogs throughout his life. He had 7 in number, and incidentally, all of them had the same name, Dash. My father was familiar with Dash 4 and Dash 5. He was impressed by their obedience to the commands of Stein. As a boy, when I was young, my father insisted obedience from me by simply saying, "Be obedient like Dash." I think I must close here by saying, no, sorry. All I can say, however, is that it's an excellent book and nothing desirable in the book from subject, scholarship, quality, content, production has been left out. Everyone connected with this publication of the book for all scholarly contributions and logistic inputs deserve praise and applaud from one and all. Speaking some more words about my grandfather, as spelled in the folder, it's humbling to share with this august assembly that he belonged to a generation of native scholars of the last century that included celebrated names like Pandit Mukundram, Pandit Jagadhar Zadu, Pandit Govind Kaul, Pandit Sahaj Bhatt, and Pandit Ishwar Kaul. All these Pandits collaborated with Western icons of Indology. The names are so well known to us: Aurel Steen, George Grierson, Philip Vogel, David Spooner, William Stratton, Morris Winternitz, and Franklin Edgerton. The only exception throughout these, the European scholars embellished all the core texts of Kashmiri and Kashmiri Sanskrit literature. The only exception, however, was Kashmiri and Sanskrit translation of Don Quixote, when a European classic was embellished in its appeal and range by Kashmiri scholars. Sanskrit and Kashmiri translations of Don Quixote are an account less of scholarship, but more propelled by unfailing and devoted friendship. Just to share some more facts of my grandfather, he maintained lifelong friendship and scholarly correspondence with Stein, Grierson, Vogel, and many others. It only came to end due to their death. Grierson going first in 1941. My grandfather died in 1942, followed by Stein in 1943. All the three icons just within 1 year of each other. I am proud to share with you that my grandfather had the privilege of meeting Swami Vivekananda when he visited Kashmir in 1897, presented and read the welcome address to Viceroy Lord Minto during his state visit to Kashmir in 1906, met Viceroy Lord Harding in 1912 during the knighthood ceremony of Oral Stein, which took place in Srinagar that year on October 12 at the Maharaja's Palace. And 2 years later, my grandfather also met the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore. It's quite coincidental that Stein and my grandfather died on the same dates they were born. Stein, as we know, was born on November 26, 1862. He died on October 26, 1943. It's a strange coincidence, but chronologically so coincidental and maintained by my grandfather. He was born on July 24, 1874, and he passed away on December 24, 1942. It may interest you to know that Stein visited my grandfather's home, and my grandfather visited him at his camps, wherever he would pitch his tents in Kashmir, be that the mountain meadow of Mohanmarg or the tents pitched in the close quarters of Chinar Bagh in Srinagar, which was less than a mile from my grandfather's home. The two met on every possible excuse they could discover whenever Stein was in Kashmir, and there were many umpteen occasions for these meetings. I think I must close here by saying Kashmiri and Sanskrit translation of Don Quixote stand testimony to the long friendship between Stein and my grandfather, and now edited into Sanskrit, its Sanskrit translation now prepared by Dr. Dragomir, marks a noble tribute to that giant enterprise of an immortal icon of Western scholarship and a Sanskrit savant of Eastern learning. I wish the Kashmiri translation too follows, and it's published without any long delay. I once again thank all of you, in particular Professor Mahesh Deokar, for the opportunity of being part of this auspicious occasion, and convey my greetings to all and one, and my best wishes for your future endeavors under the Pune Indological series. I convey my personal greetings and profound gratitude to Dr. Dragomir and Professor Mahesh Deokar for having gifted me several copies of the books that I gifted to my friends and other members of the family. Namaskar to all, and thank you for the opportunity. I am grateful. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Surendranath ji, for this very wonderful and touching touching speech which you have given. It really could give us some idea of how that meeting would have been, how that interaction, of your grandfather and Oral Stein must have been. It really also brings us kind of a, makes us really feel proud that you actually belong to that wonderful legacy and lineage of scholarship. And thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this. Now we would like to take a pause here, and we are actually going to formally release the book. Unfortunately, our Honorable Vice Chancellor had to leave because of some important meeting. But I would request Colonel Nath and Professor Bahulkar and also maybe Professor Mihir to release the book formally. So please, I think, turn on your videos and please release the book. I request all the three scholars here who are sitting to release the book formally. We are very happy that today we are having this wonderful gathering, and I can see many great scholars. Professor Aklushkar has also joined, and all our other colleagues, Mr. Ashley Forbes, who is responsible for the production of the book. He is also here, and in presence of all these people, we are going to release the book. Yes.
Yes, sir. It is
Yes.
visible.
You can just show it. Okay, so this is the book. This is the fruit of our efforts of all of us, the entire team, and I'm really happy that
I
today
think with
Colonel
your
Nath is.
permission, I can also show the book. It's here
Yes,
with
please,
me.
please. Surendranath ji is also showing his book. He's also sitting there, and
I'm
he's also.
glad to share the screen.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you so much. It's
Yes,
an
yes.
honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, and I would also like now to request Professor Colonel Nath. I'm so used to kind of this university setup, so always whenever I want to take your name, the professor comes to my mind first, but not Colonel. So I'm very sorry for that. Yes, Colonel Nath. So we would now like to request you um, to be a part of this celebration. We are completing 15 years of our journey as a department, and I would like you and Professor Bahulkar also to jointly cut the cake to celebrate the 15th birthday of the department as well. So, Professor Bahulkar and Colonel Nath, please. उनको spotlight कीजिए ना Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Yes. You do it. So we're having another photo for the book release. So Thank you very much to all the dignitaries. Now, I would like to request Dr. Dragomir Dimitrov to talk about the book and to share his journey about the book with the audience. So, Dragomir,
Hi,
so
namaste.
can you please, yes, take on the proceedings now. Dragomir, you can go ahead.
Namaste. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dear guests, dear friends, I'm absolutely humbled and I don't know what to say by this celebration. I'm really very grateful to the department, to Professor Mahesh Delkar and to everyone else involved there. I'm really very sorry that I cannot attend physically, but I feel at home there in Pune, and I only regret that I won't be able to share with you the gulab jamuns, which are probably a necessary part of the celebration. Because we don't have so much time left, and I was asked by Mahesh to say a few words about Quixote, I thought I should rather start straight away with a short presentation. I have expressed already several times my gratitude to everyone involved in creating this publication. Because all the speakers before me already said so many kind words, and almost everyone involved is present today here. I would not say now any names further. I'm incredibly happy that so many people are attending, so many good friends, and so many people involved in this publication. I would now suggest to, so I'm starting now sharing my screen. So actually Shanti Priya is now sharing his screen with you. And can you please just confirm whether you see now the screen with the title of my talk, Encounters with Dan Quickshorter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the third volume of the Punindological series contains, as you already heard, a partial Sanskrit translation of several chapters from the first part of the Spanish Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. It is a well-known fact that the Spanish original, which appeared in Madrid in the beginning of 1605, acquired great popularity in Europe and within just a few years gained the status of what nowadays some would call a cult book. Or as Samuel Putnam has once put it, a phenomenal and worldwide bestseller. As it often happens with a genius work, its author could hardly enjoy the immediate benefits of creating what the British Hispanist Fitzmaurice Kelly described pointedly as the most Catholic book of all time, which, judged by any test, whether of authority or of vogue, must be accounted among the foremost books of the world. Moreover, both Cervantes and his publisher had to endure some disadvantages, such as pirate copies, and in particular the unpleasant incident caused by one Alonso Fernandez, who, resting on Cervantes' shoulders, published the spurious continuation of Don Quixote, not later than 1614. Perhaps fortunately so, for the unscrupulous deed of his rival must have motivated Cervantes to bring out sooner than later the second part of Don Quixote, which according to most critics proved in literary terms to be even more successful than the first part. The sequel was released in the winter of 1615, more than a decade after the first part had come out and only a few months before Cervantes passed away at the age of 69 on April 22nd, 1616 in Madrid. He was buried one day later, only some 10 days before another giant of world literature, William Shakespeare, passed away in Stratford-upon-Avon. Within less than 2 weeks, the world lost two of its most brilliant literary figures, whose works, however, will certainly remain for as long as human civilization endures. A few weeks ago, I was asked by a senior German scholar of Chinese studies why I have directed my attention to such an unusual material as a Sanskrit translation of Cervantes' Don Quixote, especially since there are so many other Sanskrit texts still awaiting research and serious study. I did not have the opportunity to elaborate on the various reasons for my unorthodox endeavors, and now too the time will not suffice to go into much detail, but at least by way of introducing to you the newly released book, I may still try to mention a few points. If I have to put my motives in a nutshell, I would say that I was led into this unusual and indeed unexpected field of exploration by two things. First, I have always been fascinated by intercultural encounters and was immediately attracted by the idea of studying the traces of the Spanish Mahavir in India. Second, I very soon became aware of the fact that the Sanskrit Don Quixote had already engaged the interest of a number of intelligent people. So following a suggestion by a prominent scholar of classics and Indo-Tibetology, whom I very much trust, I thought that it is certainly justified to invest time and efforts into this seemingly unimportant, utterly quixotic work. Ever since I first listened to the magnificent album West Meets East with Pandit Ravi Shankar, Ustad Al-Araka, and Maestro Yehudi Menuhin many years ago, I have been admiring people who come from different traditions. In the particular case, a Hindu, a Muslim, and a Jew playing a sitar, a tabla, and a violin, respectively. And by crossing various borders, create something together which many other people can then appreciate irrespective of their own creed and learn more about each other than if they would have remained confined within the limits of what they regard as their own heritage and tradition. Before Quixote finally reached India in the last quarter of the 19th century, there were, of course, many other intercultural encounters with the participation of India, or one of the great sources of global civilization, as Menuhin himself once described this part of the world. A beautiful visual illustration of such an encounter can be still seen today in the University College Chapel in Oxford. There is placed a memorial to Sir William Jones, which the notable British sculptor John Flaxman prepared in 1801 at the request of William Jones's wife after his premature death in 1794. He was only 48 when he passed away in Calcutta. Sir William Jones is undoubtedly very well known to everyone here. At his suggestion, the Asiatic Society of Bengal was founded in 1784, and he is also considered as the father of Indo-European linguistics, since in his third anniversary discourse, delivered in 1786, he famously said that the Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either, yet bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots of verbs and in the forms of grammar, than could possibly have been produced by accident, and so on. Despite all his contributions to the study of Indian civilization, and regardless of the beauty of his memorial in Oxford, some 20 years ago, it aroused negative feelings in the hearts and minds of some Indians. First, Arindam Chakravarti, a professor at the Department of Philosophy in the University of Hawaii, wrote that, I quote, "This marble frieze shows Sir William on a chair writing something down on a desk while three Indian traditional scholars squatting in front of him are either interpreting a text or contemplating or reflecting on some problem." In Chakravarti's view, I quote again, "The inscription below hails Jones as the Justinian of India because he formed a digest of Hindu and Mohammedan laws. The truth is that he translated and interpreted into English a tiny tip of the massive iceberg of ancient Indian Dharmashastra literature, along with some Islamic law books. Yet the monument says and shows Jones to be the lawgiver and the native informer to be the receiver of knowledge," end of quote. I fail to recognize here Jones as the lawgiver and the Indian Pandits as receivers of his knowledge, and certainly nothing like this is claimed in the Latin inscription of the memorial. Yet, on the basis of his prejudiced interpretation of the relief and its caption, Chakravarti made the following questionable conclusion. What this amply illustrates is that the semiotics of colonial encounters have, perhaps indelibly, inscribed a profound asymmetry of epistemic prestige upon any future East-West exchange of knowledge. End of quote. This was enough to motivate people like Rajiv Malhotra to see, I quote, a colonial wall carving which blatantly boasts of the intellectual conquest of Sanskrit by the British. End of quote. And to repeat the same mantra of the profound asymmetry of epistemic prestige in any East-West exchange of knowledge represented by this monument. Moreover, some people have been so much disturbed that about 15 years ago, allegedly, a request was sent to Oxford to remove this offending panel. As far as I'm aware, however, the memorial in Oxford has remained unscathed and can still be seen in the University College Chapel. In addition, anyone interested in the work of John Flaxman can also have a look at his design drawings for the memorial, which are easily accessible at the website of the British Library. My main reason for drawing your attention towards Flaxman's artistic representation of Sir William Jones and the three Indian pundits is the fact that, quite unjustly, poor Jones has also been held responsible for not letting Don Quixote become known in India. Thus, Shyama Prasad Ganguly, a well-known Hispanist, has noted that, curiously enough, the first copy of Don Quixote finds home in Calcutta as far back as the 1780s, thanks to William Jones, who is known to have enjoyed and entertained himself reading it in the Spanish version in company of his wife in Calcutta, via his biography, Life and Mind of Oriental Jones, the father of modern linguistics. Unfortunately for us, Jones did not think it necessary to talk about Cervantes or his book to local pundits whom he was meeting so frequently to formulate his path-breaking hypothesis on the Indo-European languages, for otherwise our contact with El Quixote would have preceded by a few decades, almost a century. End of quote. It is quite instructive to see how such unverified information is derived and how later scholars uncritically adopt and spread this kind of alternative facts, that is, falsehoods. Shortly after Ganguly wrote his accusation, a German Hispanist, Henriette Patsch, inspired by him and her reading of Edward Said's Orientalism, wrote that one of the first attested readers of Quixote in India did apparently nothing to share with the natives the book he has been reading. Patsch has tried to explain the alleged unwillingness of Sir William Jones to share his knowledge of Don Quixote with his Indian acquaintances by observing that, I quote, the hierarchies which the balance of power and the prestige of the different cultures bring to an expression with regard to each other are in a state of constant change and remain quite contradictory, end of quote. I'm not going to waste your time further with this post-colonial gibberish and would like only to point out the simple fact that William Jones's reading of Don Quixote in Calcutta in the last quarter of the 18th century is not at all documented, and moreover, it may have not taken place there at all. What Garland Cannon, his biographer, has communicated in his biography of Jones is the following. He read aloud to Anna, his wife, daily. After a week's introduction to Spanish, she was able to read Cervantes' minor novels with facility, and he read her another. End of quote. Jones's letter to George John Spencer, on which Cannon's digest is ultimately based, makes it actually clear that Jones has referred to the novellas ejemplares, since he explicitly mentions La Hermosa Gitanilla from La Gitanilla. And in addition, he may have also had in mind Cervantes' comedies. The relevant excerpt from this letter sent on September the 19th, 1788 from Krishnanagar reads, she, that is Lady Anna Jones, is now as much pleased with Spanish as you can be with German. And while you are amused with Gessner, whose Tot Abels I read many years ago, we are laughing with Cervantes. She has not begun above a week and can read the novels of that elegant writer with facility. She is now sitting by me engaged with La Hermosa Gitanilla. As for Don Quixote, Jones certainly knew it well enough, as any educated European of the 18th century did, and yet, at least as far as can be judged from his own letters, he had read Cervantes' magnum opus much earlier in England when he was still a student in Oxford. From a sale catalogue of Jones's library, we know that he was in possession of 2 volumes of Don Quixote published in Antwerp in 1719, yet there is no evidence whatsoever that these volumes have ever traveled to Calcutta. Even if they did, his set would have hardly been the first copy of Cervantes' work to reach India, for, as is well known, in the 17th and 18th centuries, quite a few Europeans have been in India, such as officials of the British East Indian Company and the Dutch East India Company, Christian missionaries, and so on, who would have most likely been acquainted with Don Quixote and in times of leisure could have enjoyed reading it either in its original Spanish or perhaps in English, French, Italian, or Dutch. All these translations were prepared less than 50 years after the release of the first edition of Don Quixote. It is in any case hard to believe that the British judge would have easily found among his Indian friends anyone with a sufficiently good grasp of Spanish. Neither Jones's Sanskrit teacher, Pandit Ramlochan, nor Pandit Kashinath Sharman, who prepared the Sanskrit dictionary for Jones, are known to have read Spanish. And even if this were the case, who knows whether they would have been inclined to render Don Quixote into Sanskrit or into any of the current Indian vernaculars. In this sense, it is certainly far-fetched to hold Jones anyhow responsible for the comparatively late arrival of Cervantes in South Asia. And it is preposterous to explain this phenomenon in post-colonial terms. It is not a secret that the reception of Don Quixote in India has been poorly studied, and Ganguly himself wrote some 15 years ago, I quote, "There has hardly been any intellectual engagement with the text in India, and even for translations, there is a total dearth of organized data," end of quote. This knowledgeable Indian Hispanist has tried to rectify the dire situation, yet even in his own writings on the subject, at least 2 or 3 glaring gaps remained, which I tried to fill to some extent with the material presented in the book officially released today. One of these gaps concerns a remarkable yet long forgotten Gujarati translation entitled Don Quixote, which was published in Mumbai in the 1880s. Even though bibliographic data concerning this important publication has been actually easily available since 1908 at the latest, when the copy of the then British Museum was catalogued for the first time, it has been largely neglected by Hispanists, including even specialists in India. The main reason for not noticing this Gujarati translation is its extremely poor accessibility. The few details which can be read in the old catalogues are based on a single copy containing only one part of the text, presently kept in the British Library. The available book is undated and contains no information about the translator in the English version, which was used by him for rendering the text into Gujarati. Since, however, the book originally belonged to the rich Cervantes collection, including nearly 400 Don Quixote editions and translations of Henry Spencer Ashby, a flamboyant Victorian book collector and bibliographer, and was bequeathed to the then British Museum after his death in July 1900, it was possible to conclude that the Gujarati translation must have been published before 1900. Moreover, since in the first introductory volume of his own English translation of Don Quixote published in 1888, Henry Edward Watts had referred twice to a recent Gujarati version, which was most probably identical with the work which you see here, it could be safely assumed that the Gujarati book, or at least one part of it, cannot have appeared any later than 1888. On the basis of the fact that the Gujarati book includes the reproduction of 64 illustrations originally designed by the French engraver and illustrator Tony Johannot, whose designs were used since 1837 in various editions of Charles Jarvis's English translation of Don Quixote, first published in 1742, it was also reasonable to suggest that the Gujarati translator must have used such an English edition. James Fitzmaurice Kelly has been one of the very few experts to take notice of this Gujarati rarity, which he documented in the Revue Hispanique by presenting an English translation of its title page prepared for him by G.F. Blumhardt, a cataloger at the British Museum. Neither of the 2 scholars, however, appear to have had sufficient information about this rare publication, which they apparently considered incomplete. The title page of Ashby's copy in the British Library makes it clear that this translation was initially printed on a monthly basis and its subscribers received 12 issues per year. Yet since no other copies were known to exist, and it could be easily assumed that the translation was not continued and only the text of the first 40 chapters was rendered into Gujarati. This was indeed what the few experts in London initially believed, even though anyone who would have consulted Trubner's American, European, and Oriental literary record for September 1889 would have immediately realized that this assumption cannot be correct. As is evident from the bibliographic information in this record, by the end of 1888, the complete Gujarati translation of Don Quixote must have already been available in a single volume comprising 746 pages with altogether 128 illustrations. Even with these details at hand, the task of reconstructing the history and establishing the exact date of this publication did not prove easy. A major obstacle was that I was not able to find the bulky Gujarati book in any institutional library, neither in the West nor in India. Thanks to two good friends, namely Professor Shrikant Bahulkar and Niyati Shah, I was fortunate enough to come in contact with Jayant Meghani, a prominent Gujarati intellectual, translator, librarian, and bookman, as well as the son of the well-known Gujarati writer Jhaverchand Meghani. I will never forget that winter day in the late January 2019, when I received Jayant Bhai's message notifying me about his being in possession of the entire Gujarati translation mentioned in Trubner's record. A most joyful and fruitful correspondence with him and his friends, Professor Deepak Mehta and Apurva Ashar, ensued, which enabled me to throw more light on the history of this fascinating book. Since the time is now very limited, I cannot go into the details, and I will only mention that according to my conclusions, the Gujarati Don Quixote was first printed in monthly issues beginning in November 1885, and in the last quarter of 1886, one part of this translation was published in the form of a book, followed in 1888 by the publication of the entire book. The overlooked Gujarati translation precedes Das Bipin Bihari Chakrabarti's Bengali adaptation Adbhut Digbijoy by a few years, and may be considered now to be the earliest complete translation of Don Quixote from English in India. It is a book typeset with so much care and taste, which hardly any later Indian edition has managed to match. The credit for this goes to Jehangir Bejamji Karani, who during his comparatively short life in the second half of the 19th century became one of the most illustrious Parsi booksellers, publishers, printers, and Gujarati typographers in Mumbai, and in addition made notable contributions as an editor and a translator from English. The Quixote volume, which Karani produced, is indeed so beautiful that it deserves to be rescued from oblivion and brought back to its Gujarati readers. For this reason, we decided to produce a digitally remastered version. And I'm very happy to report that my friend Apurva Ashar from Navjivan Trust in Ahmedabad has taken to heart this initiative, and that by the end of this year or the beginning of next one, we should be able to see this jewel shining again. It fills me with great sadness, however, that Jayant Bhai passed away in December last year, so he will not be able to become a witness of the completion of this quixotic endeavor, which he himself was so eagerly and graciously supporting. The least we can do will be to release the Gujarati book in Jayant Bhai's memory. The earliest Gujarati translation of Don Quixote completely escaped Shyama Prasad Ganguly's attention, but he has been lucky enough to learn personally from Surendranath Pandita about the availability of another two incarnations of the Spanish Mahavir, namely the partial translations from English into Sanskrit and Kashmiri. The Sanskrit incarnation of Don Quixote is exactly the one which constitutes the core of the book presented here today. As you already know, the Sanskrit text was prepared by Jagadhar Zadhu and his senior colleague Nityanand Shastri in the 1930s in Srinagar. In the beginning of this talk, I suggested that what motivated me to work on this edition was not only the fact that this Sanskrit text represents the fruit of a highly entertaining and intriguing West-East cultural encounter, but also because it soon became clear to me that besides the two reputed Kashmiri Pandits, several other learned people have also been involved in it in one way or the other. As a justification for spending countless hours on this project and engaging a number of friends in helping me to complete it successfully, I may quote the following statement by the British scholar David Roy Shackleton Bailey. First, a pursuit which engages the interests of a considerable number of intelligent people can empirically be reckoned worthwhile. Second, a society which cares only for work that is somehow aimed at the satisfaction of its lust for power or its physical appetites should be in a fair way towards an inglorious end of bombs or boredom. End of quote. Without the initiative of Surendranath Pandita, who in 2002 drew the scholarly attention towards the existent manuscripts of partial Kashmiri and Sanskrit translations of Don Quixote and provided some interesting details about the work by his grandfather Nityanand Shastri and Jagadhar Zadhu, I would not have had the occasion to talk to you today and would not have had the chance to make so many pleasant encounters in the recent past. Fortunately, some 10 years ago, my colleague Stanislav Jager, this is the young gentleman on the left side with the blue shirt, read Pandita's groundbreaking article in Marburg and suggested to Professor Jürgen Haneder, who is hiding behind Professor Delker here, to have a closer look at the Sanskrit manuscript. I happened to be in Philadelphia at that time and was able to procure a digital copy of the entire codex kept in the Houghton Library at Harvard University, which is, by the way, a task incomparably easier than getting access to materials locked in the invincible citadel of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. Once we had the manuscript at our disposal, in the summer term of 2012, we started regular reading sessions in Germany. We read the entire work at a leisurely pace, along with several translations in English and German, occasionally comparing the Sanskrit text with the Spanish original and the Hindi translation by Vibha Maurya. The direct use of the Sanskrit version allowed the participants of this class to draw some important conclusions about the nature of the Sanskrit text and the sources used by the translators. In 2015, Haneder had the opportunity to communicate in Paris and Pune some of the preliminary results reached during the reading sessions of the Sanskrit Don Quixote, and soon afterwards his lecture appeared in a book published as the first volume of the Pune Indological series. At the same time, Haneder also compiled the first rough draft of an edition of the Sanskrit text based for the most part on a transcript prepared by Frank Helbig and Stefan Maas, who in this period studied Indology in Marburg. Equipped with Pandita's publications, Haneder's materials, and the notes I used to take myself during our reading sessions, I decided to go ahead with the idea of bringing out a bilingual English-Sanskrit edition of those parts of the text which have been translated by Jagadhar Zadhu and Nityanand Shastri. For this purpose, the manuscript of the Sanskrit text was checked carefully one more time, parts of it were transcribed anew, a critical apparatus was supplied, and the entire work was presented on facing pages with the English version by Charles Jarvis on the left-hand side and the Sanskrit translation typeset with a newly prepared historical reconstruction of the Schlegel Schrift on the right-hand side. You already heard Kishore Patil talking about the development of the Unicode font Schlegel, which he was so incredibly kind and capable to prepare. The original font itself was designed, as you already heard, exactly 200 years ago in Paris by August Wilhelm von Schlegel, an esteemed literary critic and translator, but also one of the first German Sanskritists who since 1818 occupied the first chair of Indology in Germany. Since I personally consider the Schlegel Schrift one of, if not the most exquisite and accomplished Nagari font ever created, I cannot resist the temptation of showing you a specimen of this beauty. On the left side, you are seeing a facsimile of one page from Schlegel's edition of the Bhagavad Gita, published in Bonn in the distant 1823. On the right side, you can compare the same text typeset with Kishore's newly prepared historical reconstruction of Schlegel's font. As you also already know, besides the printed edition, we had the privilege of adding to the package an audiobook with a complete recording of the Sanskrit text read by Professor Shrikant Bahulkar. This is a Sanskrit audiobook of nearly 5 hours and a half with short interludes of medieval Spanish music played by Maestro Jordi Savall and his orchestra, with a tabla accompaniment subsequently prepared and added by my son's guru, Anup Gaikwar. This is a short description of what you'll find in volume 3 of the Pune Indological series and how it came to be. In the introduction to the book, you will also be able to read in detail about the history of the Sanskrit translation, which has been remarkably well documented in a number of letters preserved in several archives. There is not much time left to go into this here, and I may only mention that it has all begun with the whim of an affluent American by the name of Carl Tilden Keller. After graduating at Harvard, he made a career in the field of accountancy, and not unlike Henry Spencer Ashby, could afford the luxury of becoming an avid book collector. Keller was especially keen to obtain translations of Don Quixote in all possible languages and passionately kept record of their number in his collection. In his search of Don Quixote materials from India, his cordial relationship with Sir Mark Aurel Stein proved most conducive. This enabled Keller to enrich his collection with Indian versions in at least 3 different languages, namely Urdu, Kashmiri, and Sanskrit. Keller communicated his idea about the Kashmiri and the Sanskrit translations in a letter to Stein dated April 6, 1935. He wrote, "I'm going to ask you something which may seem awfully silly, but if you're a book collector, you are of course silly. I was wondering if I couldn't have an abbreviated translation made into Sanskrit, Kashmiri, Prakrit, or Pali, if you knew any person or persons who could do such a stunt, with whom I could open a correspondence to find out about what the cost would be. I intend to write Baron von Steyr-Holstein, who, as you know, is in Peking, and find out if he can have it done in Tibetan. And I shall also write to Owen Latimore, who is now in Peking, and ask him if it can be done in Manchu and Mongolian. Did you ever hear of such nonsense?" End of quote. Quite remarkably, it took only about 2 years for Keller to see all his extravagant ideas accomplished. In 1937, he could boast of having a partial translation in Manchu in 4 volumes, in Mongolian in a volume of 112 leaves, and in Tibetan in a volume of 151 leaves. The Sanskrit and Kashmiri translations of Don Quixote were completed even faster, by the end of August and September 1936, respectively. This feat became possible thanks to Sir Aurel Stein's old friendship with Pandit Nityanand Shastri. In his reply to Keller, dated May 3, 1935, Stein wrote, "I must briefly reply to what you state as regards the desired expansion of your Don Quixote. I fully appreciate the extent to which you have thrown your net in this matter, and I quite understand that your endeavor to add to the number of translations is a very natural and laudable one, but I fear I can hold out very little hope as regards any really useful translation into Sanskrit or Kashmiri being secured through the channel at my disposal. The only person whom I know in Kashmir capable of intelligently rendering from English the immortal story is Pandit Nityanand, a former assistant professor at the Maharaja's College, Srinagar. I hope to see that worthy old friend before the end of this month, and shall then find out whether he is prepared to take up the task and what the suitable remuneration would have to be." End of quote. As the rapidly following events and results in 1935 to 1937 prove, Nityanand Shastri and his younger colleague Jagadhar Zadhu exceeded Stein's expectations a lot. A set of Cervantes' Don Quixote in the English translation of Charles Jarvis, edited by Fitzmaurice Kelly, arrived in Srinagar on October 13th, 1935, and by the end of November, the work on the Sanskrit and Kashmiri translations had already begun. By February 1936, no one less than Sir George Grierson was already aware of this enterprise, which he wholeheartedly supported and was looking to see the Kashmiri translation in printed form. Before the end of August 1936, the Sanskrit translation was completed, and the Kashmiri one was to follow very soon, as Zadhu himself informed Stein in a letter which he received with the manuscript on September 22nd, 1936 in northwestern Iran, where he was doing some explorations. The Sanskrit manuscript was sent back to Srinagar to be recopied by a calligrapher on Kashmiri paper. In the meantime, on October 16th, 1936, the manuscript of the Kashmiri translation in Zadhu's own handwriting reached Stein in Kermanshah in Iran, who immediately forwarded it to Boston, where it reached in the winter of 1936. The beautiful fair copy of the Sanskrit translation was ready in the beginning of 1937 and reached Keller in Boston via London on April the 21st, 1937. And since this time, both manuscripts have been kept in Harvard, and it seems that very few people have ever consulted them there. A notable exception is the fact that the Sanskrit translation was thoroughly read in Boston by the famous American Indologist Charles Rockwell Lundman, who moreover added some very useful corrections in red ink. Nityanand Shastri and Jagadhar Zadhu produced indeed lovely Sanskrit and Kashmiri translations of Don Quixote, which more than 80 years later we are still able to read with great satisfaction and gratitude. To put it briefly, what we have today is the fruit of boundless intellectual curiosity, lasting friendship, full dedication, aesthetic pleasure, and most of all, vast and untarnished knowledge. The work initiated out of the childish desire of an inquisitive American, actively facilitated and arranged by a Hungarian-born British scholar, and completed by two highly capable and open-minded Indian pundits who, without doubt, greatly enjoyed rendering into Sanskrit and Kashmiri Charles Jarvis's English translation of Cervantes' Spanish classic, provides, in my view, a wonderful example for a glorious West-East and East-West encounter. I truly believe that what wise people such as Ravi Shankar, Alaraka, Yehudi Menuhin, Keller, Stein, Shastri, Zadhu, and the like have done is worth to be known, enjoyed, and emulated to the benefit of all. As I can hardly formulate it any better, let me quote in the end a few lines which John Lennon sang in his song You're Here. East is East and West is West. The twain shall meet. East is West and West is East. Let it be complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, you are not audible. Hello, sir. Devkar,
Yes,
sir.
sorry. Yeah, I can. Okay, sorry. So, Dragomir, thank you very much for this wonderful talk, and you have really, drawn a picture before us about for this entire journey, referring to all the all those who were really engaged in this, and such a journey of around more than 400 years. So thank you very much for this wonderful talk. I'm really happy that all of us are here today to celebrate this occasion, to celebrate this collaboration, not just East and West, but also in the East. There are so many institutions and people coming together to make this happen. I especially would like to put on record and thank the University of Marburg for financially supporting the production of the book, for the printing costs, and I'm really thankful to Professor Jürgen Haneda and his efforts for getting the financial support for PIS2 and PIS3 together. So I'm really thankful to the University of Marburg and Jürgen Haneda for this. Now we are coming to a very important section of today's program, and I would like to request Colonel Nath to to share his thoughts on this. And I'm really happy that today he really could make his time to join us here and to grace the occasion by his presence. I would like to hear more from him, and would like also to get an assurance from him to have such many more such collaborations in future. And we are working in the field of ancient languages and literature, and we would really appreciate the support of institutes like CIDEC, who are really, the leading institute in working in the field of the language study, and also in the field of font design, and so on. So now I request Professor Colonel Nath to say a few words on this occasion. So please, sir, thank you.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So Professor Devkar, Professor Bahulkar, Mr. Surendranath Pandita,
Professor Arjun Wadkar, Professor Joshi, my colleague Kishore Patil, and Dr. Dragomir, who joined us from a long distance, and all the people in the department here who are witnessing the function both here physically and online, all the people who have joined. Firstly, a very, very hearty congratulations for completing 15 years of your department. It is indeed a great occasion for all of you. And as rightly, a few slips of tongue by Professor Devkar that, mentioning me as a doctor rather than a colonel. I'm quite used to it because I joined after, CDAC after last about 11 years I have been in CDAC. And after the army, now I don't at all feel out of place with the academicians, with scientists. But yes, this slip of tongue is always there because I'm always sharing places with literary doctors or, doctors of science and technology. Nevertheless, I've gotten around to, getting around with people of your, I would say, pursuits and like the army has trained us to embrace change because every 2 years, 3 years, we actually had a different job role. So in fact, I've been constantly in one job role since 11 years, so it's quite a disappointment for me. But it's really great to see the passion in all of you for the release of this book and for the literary pursuits, and it's actually visible. I could sense the passion the moment I entered here, and once you all spoke, great amount of dedication, passion for your work, which actually speaks in the form of your achievement. So I really congratulate all of you, and I would definitely want and encourage these kind of initiatives to proceed further. And computers, of course, I would say now have become the modern day, Aladdin lamps. You wish anything and they make it possible. Only thing is that you need to be very clear about your requirement and spell it out nicely and concisely to the genie. Of course, the genie out here is a very special breed of people called programmers. And once that requirement is clearly spelled out, and they really make it happen. So, having said that much, I would definitely like to nurture this collaboration between CDAC and the university and the department in this pursuit of fonts, languages, heritage, etc. We have been doing a lot of good work in heritage preservation in CDAC. Of course, Kishore would be telling you what I would like to tell you that we are doing not only literature preservation, but heritage monuments and doing walkthroughs for museums, designing virtual museums, making scripts for not only Sanskrit, because we are again having a big project with the Deccan College, where we are making a Sanskrit script and trying to have more dictionaries created. I believe they already created 35 dictionaries, but Sanskrit being a huge repository of words, symbols, letters. We are still not able to actually capture the entire gamut of the special symbols, etc. in Sanskrit. So we are making another script for that, and that is the actually scope of the project. And after that, we'll be doing the dictionary. So these are some of the very interesting works we are doing. Other than that, Kishore and other people have been involved in designing fonts for other Indian heritage scripts and languages, the Marwadi and Sindhi and of course, which is the other one? Bori, yeah, and the Marathi script also. Mitilakshar. So a lot of work is going on in these areas, and now we have been blessed under the National Supercomputing Mission. We got huge amount of compute resource, which is there for the asking. It's there for scholars, for academicians like you. And it's not only in Pune, you can use resources all over the country. And we already have a machine installed in ISER Pune. We have a huge machine which has been installed in CDAC. It's 210 AI petaflop machine for training models in artificial intelligence. Other than that, of course, we have smaller machines. We have our Param series of machines. So there is no dearth of compute available. And I would actually, it is actually a accelerator and a, path breaker for your kind of initiatives, because already we have a huge pool of people who understand languages, who understand fonts in CDAC, who are working in these areas. So we can work shoulder to shoulder and accelerate the process of going further in these areas. As I believe and I have seen that creating a font is not just the end of it. It is actually I would say a lens or a peephole into a lot of knowledge which is hidden from the world. With that, you can have dictionaries, you can understand the language, you can understand the literature, the heritage. You can have a very good idea about what the earlier civilizations who were associated with that particular script or a font, they wanted to convey. And also you can use that knowledge for your present and for your future. So I think it's understanding your heritage is something which is a must. Preserving your heritage is a must today. And that's why a huge amount of initiatives all across the world. In fact, I believe I read somewhere that they are even trying to see if they can clone the earth, not just knowledge. So I think it's a wonderful journey. It's a wonderful journey both for the people who are involved in the computing field to know how they can actually help the academicians and researchers accelerate their work, and of course the other way around. It would be wonderful for you to know what all we can do for you, and also try and take a sneak peek as to what we do in the computing field. They're most welcome, and I would again reiterate that this kind of collaboration should grow. In fact, we already, the Vice Chancellor is not here, but we already have in our previous building in the university, which we have vacated, we already have set up a center of excellence for artificial intelligence and augmented reality and virtual reality, in which we are going to have a lot of training courses where we are going to offer free courses for people in the university here. So you're most welcome to join some courses and just see how these things function. And any day, anything we can do jointly, it will be our pleasure. So with these words, I take leave, and once again, congratulate you on completing these 15 years and on this historic launch of the third series of non-keyboarding. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel Nath, for this wonderful and kind words. I'm sure that we will really need to invoke the gene, like for example, like we are working in the field of dictionaries. Recently, actually, we have taken up a project where we are actually preparing a dictionary into 4 different languages. In such cases, we have the knowledge, expertise in languages, but we lack the expertise in technology, and I think this is where people like you and CDAC, I mean, would be of great help for us. We are also starting a course in Buddhist heritage and tourism, where I think again there is a need to use technology for the preservation of heritage and also for showcasing it. So I think we can really work together in these two fields. And my colleagues who are interested in technology and computer, I think they can really take benefit of this. Let us, meet again and formulate something concrete so that we can really take it further for future. I must here express my sincere thanks to Professor Hemant Darbari, the director of the CDAC. In fact, it was because of his courtesy that we are today having Colonel Nath with us for this function. So I thank also Professor Darbari here, and both of you please convey my thanks to him. And I'm really thankful to Kishore Patil and Colonel Nath, both of you for joining us and spending your time with us. So I'm really happy that we all could celebrate here the 15th anniversary of the department and this historic launch of the book. Let me just propose a vote of thanks to all those who are present here, Professor Bahulkar and Mihir Aniruddha, and all my colleagues who are here. There are many who have joined us online. I'm especially thankful to Dragomir and Surendranath ji for sparing time and joining us and giving, sharing their valuable memories, important memories. I'm also thankful to Aspi Forbes for being present for the function. I can see many dignitaries, as I said, like Professor Akluchkar also attended the function. I'm really thankful to all these dignitaries for encouraging us, and I'm sure that with your support and cooperation, the department will make further progress in years to come. I would also like to convey my sincere thanks to Aditya Goyal ji of Aditya Prakashan for being our distributors in India, and also to Vajra Books in Nepal. I'm also thankful to again all the colleagues and especially those who were involved in the production of the book, Anup Gaikwad and all the Gujarati friends whom Dragomir mentioned, like Professor Mehta, and who have been here especially for this function. So with these words, I thank you all and take your leave for today. But let us meet again for some such similar occasion. So thank you very much. I must thank in the end Deepali Patil, who was organizing and coordinating this event today, and Dr. Talat, who is managing things here, and my other colleagues, Ritesh, Deepak, Pranali, and Trupti for their support. Let me also thank Manoj for doing the photography of the program, and Atul, Guntal, and Pawar and Kunal for their wonderful support to make everything possible for making all these arrangements. So thanks to everybody and to our staff. So 3 cheers to all of us. And thank you very much. So with these words, I take your leave and end this meeting. So Deepali, you can now probably end the meeting with thanks to everybody. Thank you very much, and bye-bye to everybody.
Thank you, sir.